Very natural.
We don't want who I really am in the video. We want the perception of me.
Hello and welcome back. You will see I have somebody here with me. This is my father. Welcome to the channel, Peter Burke.
Thank you very much.
This is your third official time being here, and it's the only time you're dressed up as yourself.
Is it really? Third time?
Yes, one time you were dressed up head to toe as a minion, one time I dressed you up as Jeffree Star, and finally you are appearing as Peter Burke. So...
This makes no sense because I get to receive a royalty check.
That watch on your wrist is your royalty check. Congratulations. So, a few months ago, I did a video. By the way, if you're wondering where we are, I'm at my parents' place. But a few months ago, I did a video where I interviewed my mom about raising a blind daughter, and you guys were really interested to hear my dad's perspective on it. So today, I asked on Twitter and on my Patreon, my private Patreon club, patreon.com/MollyBurke. I asked for questions for my dad, and honestly, you guys delivered, like, so many good questions, way better questions than they sent in for mom. Everybody was on their A game. I could have taken every question. I think my favorite is very hard hitting. I hope you're ready. What's your favorite kind of bread?
Ooh, that's actually a tricky question because I eat sourdough bread now kind of exclusively, but I think if you said what's my favorite bread, I'd have to go with the classic French stick.
Boom! I literally said that to mom. I said, he's gonna say sourdough, but really French. Nailed it! I know my dad. Also, you heard it here first. Sourdough and French. Boom. Other than that, all the questions were like really, really thought-provoking, and I honestly think we might have to do a part 2 for this, so give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it and you feel like it was insightful or you learned something or found it interesting in any way, because if it gets enough thumbs up, we will definitely do a part 2. I'm agreeing for him right now.
So should I have teaser answers to sort of lure people back to part 2?
Exactly. Just reel them in. Give them the bait and we'll just reel them right in. We'll start with a question that makes the most sense to start with, which was, what was your initial reaction when you heard about my conditions? It's hard because it was obviously a journey getting all the diagnoses.
I mean, I think my initial reaction was probably like shock and a bit of disbelief. And then because we've never really had any exposure to the world of vision loss or blindness or even disability, really, it was just this kind of overwhelming sense of kind of doom and what would the future hold and not knowing what that was going to be like.
And I think that's very fair because I think a lot of able-bodied parents would feel that way when their child is diagnosed with a disability, because most able-bodied people historically have not had exposure to disabled people.
Right. And so at the time it was very much outside of my own lived experience. So I had no way of kind of understanding it and connecting it to it and sort of saying, oh, okay, this is just the way it's going to be. Okay, let's move forward. Right.
I mean, we have in today, like in 2021, there isn't a ton of exposure for able-bodied people to the disability community. And so if we think of the access we have now and then compare it to what we would have had in the mid to late 90s when I was going through my diagnosis journey, you can imagine there was really nothing. Given the percentage of disabled characters currently portrayed in media, back then it was even less, and we're at less than 2% exposure in North America right now. So it would have been very out of the realm. And I think that's why videos like this and just like content creators that are disabled are so important, because it gives parents who wouldn't have exposure any other way an opportunity to gain some information or comfort. So when I was diagnosed, what was your biggest fear for me?
I don't know if I had sort of what I classify as one biggest fear, but the one sort of burning thought I had, and again it was like projecting this sighted person's vision of doom, which now looking back I feel like horrible for even thinking about it because it's just ridiculous. But I just went to this kind of very dark place thinking like she'll never be able to see the face of her baby. And I guess maybe that was because you were still so young and having small babies was still sort of really relevant to me. But it just was this sort of overwhelming sense of sorrow, as if that one thing was, define somebody's life experience. So looking back now, it's absolutely ridiculous. But at the time it was this, as I said, this deep well of sorrow, but oh my goodness, you'll never see the face of her own child.
And the good news is, I don't want kids.
So really, is that, one of those, is that, cause or result?
There you go. question really interesting. I'm actually curious to know. So how, when I was diagnosed, did you kind of prepare for my future? And how did the reality of facing it differ from what you had prepared yourself for?
I don't know if I would say I overly prepared, only because I probably don't prepare for those kind of things.
He's very much a procrastinator. It's where I've gotten it from, so thank you.
You're welcome. And well, no, it's but constantly. Like I remember when Neve and I, you know, when we first started talking about starting a family, and Neve was very much about like, I'm ready to start a family, and I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm ever going to be ready to start a family, so let's just go with it and I'll roll with the flow. This was kind of like that, and that, but I guess I did think that there's things that we need to be able to do as parents to understand how to best parent somebody who's going to be, you know, losing their vision progressively over time. And again, because we were starting with the base of zero knowledge, it felt a bit intimidating. And then over time, as you sort of lived with it and you sort of got exposure, you got experience, it becomes much more normalized. And suddenly, all of the things that you're fearful of and worried about don't really end up to be things you have to be concerned about.
I think also probably you didn't have as much time to prepare as you would have thought, because the doctors kind of initially guessed that I was going to lose my vision closer to 30s, 40s, 50s, and then of course I ended up having Tulip 1, a much more aggressive form of RP that caused me to lose my vision much earlier than expected. So you also didn't have as much time to prepare yourself as you would have initially had been told.
Yeah, no, that's true, and also because, you know, it's funny, like, you know, time could go, the older you get, the faster time seems to go. So what you think is going to be, oh, we'll have years to figure this out, they go by very quickly, and suddenly it's like, oh, this is a new challenge. And particularly as your vision loss was progressive, it was almost like always a learning curve. Like what might have worked 6 months ago no longer works now. So now we have to think about a different way of approaching the problem or thinking about something, because what we used to do is no longer effective because Molly's vision has deteriorated to a point where that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, and that's what's very difficult when you live with progressive vision loss. It's difficult for your teachers. It's difficult for your peers. It's very difficult for people to understand, because they figure out how to adapt and how to help you, and then it changes. And that's it's frustrating for us on the end of the one dealing with the vision loss, because we too are trying to figure out how to not only accommodate ourselves, but then how to communicate to other people what you're seeing and how to help you. And so imagine doing that when you're like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. It's very hard to find a way to do that. So it's really important to have that family support, and I'm really lucky that I did have that. Did you make any environmental changes to the house to help me with my vision loss? This is really interesting.
So when we got Molly's diagnosis, we were actually living in a house that we bought that was in dire need of renovation. We hadn't finalized any of the plans, so it was still the original house, which was woefully insufficient, even just for people to be living in. Like there was literally
it's like cat pee everywhere. Tiles were falling off the walls.
In the basement, there was literally like a ringing washing machine. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
There was a ringing washing machine like that they had in the 50s, kind of thing. And so, like, basically, we gutted that house. And I did think it made us rethink sort of what did we need to do from a space perspective. You know, so we put a lot more pot lights in than we would have, and we put pot lights into a lot more rooms than we normally would have. So, for example, you know, lots of people put pot lights into their family room or their kitchen, and we did all that. But we also put pot lights into the bedrooms, right? And we did a lot more. We were a lot more focused on bringing in more natural light. So, like, we put in more skylights. We made sure there were lots of big windows. So, a lot of thought went into sort of how do we capture light.
And all the lights were on dimmer switches as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, all the lights were on dimmer switches. Yeah. So I think that was probably the biggest environmental change.
And painting Molly's room in strong colors.
Yes, this was actually a funny one, because my parents had painted my room in the haste of just like getting the whole place done. They painted my room a very, very, very pastel green.
It's lovely. Perfectly appropriate. Still should have remained that color.
Years later, I go to my parents and I was complaining that I wanted to paint my room a fun color. And in somewhere along the line of talking to them about wanting to paint my room a fun color, I mentioned how it was so boring to have a white room. And they were like, you don't have a white room. You have a green room. And I was like...
And that's when it became clear. It's like, oh my God, she's colorblind. It's like, what do we do? She's colorblind.
So it was really funny. So they like immediately jumped on board and like did a full room transformation and painted all of these like very gaudy bright colors, which would have been horrendous for any sighted person to try to sleep in. Literally my ceiling was bright orange, my walls were hot pink,
It was
and
Lizzie
bright
McGuire.
green. It was all the Lizzie McGuire Hilary Duff paints. And they fully transformed my room to this bright, colorful space that I could see everything. And then a few years later, as my vision diminished even more, and I now couldn't see the difference between the orange and pink or anything, and I needed real high color contrast, they again transformed my whole room to be black walls, white ceiling, dark purple with white stencils on the walls, so I could like really see all this high color contrast. So they were really good about like continually updating my room to make sure it was like the one space in the house that I could kind of enjoy visually for myself. If you could go back in time, and I think this will be helpful for parents whose kids are kind of currently going through the diagnosis process, if you could go back in time to when I was diagnosed, what advice or what thing would you tell your younger self?
That's actually kind of easy now. Look back. To me, it would be like, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Like, as I said, I had these initial visions of doom and gloom. And now you look back and you're kind of going, my God, that was silly. That was like, what a ridiculous response. Because, you know, as you know, we've come to realize, losing your vision losing your vision isn't, you know, I mean, it's a significant disability. It creates all sorts of challenges, but it doesn't prevent you from being happy. It doesn't prevent you from having a rich, full life. It doesn't prevent you from pursuing your dreams. You just go through life differently than I go through life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you absorb information and experiences differently than I do, but it doesn't make them any less valid or any less real. So all the stuff that I kind of got hung up about as being these problems actually weren't the problems. So that's what I go back to tell myself, which is it's going to be okay, and everything's going to be fine, and you just have to work hard to prepare your child for their future, to enable them to be successful, and then support them as parents kind of do naturally anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not going to be easy, but raising kids isn't easy. You don't sign up for raising kids because it's going to be easy. You know, having a blind child or a disabled child is going to present different problems than regular parenthood, but like at the end of the day, it will work out and it will be okay. And I think a good question to ask after that as a follow-up is, what is one thing that because of my blindness, I actually do better than you or better than most people that you would love to be able to do?
Well, I mean, the one thing that springs to mind is that silly experience we had in Cuba years ago when we were on vacation, and we went to a restaurant and there was a blackout and they had to evacuate the restaurant, and literally zero light, and you guided us out with your cane. You were able to guide us out of the restaurant. So I thought, well, that's a skill I don't have because I've got vision. But more realistically, actually, what I would think of it, it's almost like going back to sort of that Martin Luther King quote, like judging people by the content of their character, right? And so, you know, it's very easy as somebody who's, relies on the vision or whatever to jump the gun, either somebody's appearance or their body language, and you can make assumptions about that person. And, you know, the benefit you have is you're judging people on their actions and their words, not their appearances, any preconceived notions you might have. And that to me is oddly a kind of a weird benefit.
Definitely.
You basically get to give people really good judgments based on your experience and exposure to them and the quality of their thing. Is that it's the content of their character that you're judging them on, not their appearance or their body language and those kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. This wasn't a question anybody asked, but I think it's interesting, so I kind of want to give you a chance to talk about this and tell the story. What do you do for work, and how did you come to finding that job?
Well, for the last 10 years, I have worked for a not-for-profit media company called Accessible Media Incorporated. It's based here in Canada. We operate 3 broadcast television stations, websites. We've launched mobile apps, and the company was originally designed to create content to make content accessible to people who are blind, partially sighted, deaf, or hard of hearing. And over time, we've evolved as an organization that we're actually creating content for, by, and about persons with disabilities most broadly, still with a focus on blindness and partial sight. And I kind of backed into this company, and I now consider myself one of the lucky people who, they say if you find something you love, it's not really a job, right? Because this is something I got passionate about, and really my early career was in sort of the media side of advertising. So I've always been involved in the media business and advertising to a degree in marketing because of working within advertising. And as I saw your challenges increase in front of you, and I sort of fast forwarded and think about challenges around accessibility and that kind of thing, and I thought, like, well, what can I do that can help? And if I was a multi-billionaire, like an Elon Musk, I could give millions of dollars to help make things better, but I'm not. And so I thought, well, what could I do that could help? And then through a former colleague of mine, he reached out and said, a former boss wanted to talk to me about this job, and I told him he needed to talk to you because, of course, he knew about you. And when I learned about this company, to me it was like, this is perfect because I can marry my background and my knowledge and passion for the media industry with a newfound sort of passion or belief that we need to move forward to make things more accessible, to create more positive portrayals of people with disabilities in media, and to create opportunities both in front of and behind the camera for persons with disabilities in this industry. So to me, it's been a sort of a weird kind of blessing that I've been able to do that. And now it's kind of like, we have this kind of weird family business thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because my brother works in kind of media space. And, my dad obviously does, and my mom works full time with me. So it really is like the family is all within the same sphere, especially considering my dad's is within accessibility in media. And I actually worked there many years ago as a TV host for 2 shows of theirs. And it was funny because the woman who was brought on to produce those shows had no idea that my dad worked there. When she went to everybody, was like, okay, I found this girl, Molly Burke, and I want her to be the host of our shows. And they were like, her dad's the VP of marketing, right? And she was like, I did not. So it was a really small world. So then for a brief period, we were both working for the same company by utter chance. And I think this is a good chance to ask a question that was sent in, which is, how do you feel about my career as a content creator? They use the word influencer, but I hate that word. So how do you feel about me being a content creator, and what job did you kind of envision for me when I was growing up?
So, well, I mean, I think actually what you do is very meaningful and very exciting. And I love the fact that, yes, you're a content creator, and I would classify you as that. I kind of see you more, I guess to me, I consider you more as a female entrepreneur, right? You're carving your own path, you're building your own business, if you will, your own career.
And there's a lot out of content creation that I do that people don't necessarily see.
Yeah, so I think it's absolutely fantastic. And of course, I love the way that you get to, work with your mom on a full-time basis and maintain that. I was less keen when we didn't get to see each other as often, so it's kind of nice to all be back together again. But I love the fact that you guys work together and enjoy working together, and that you're doing this on a sort of day in, day out basis.
Help! Shush you back there! You're fine. Give her a piece of cheese. Throw her a piece of cheese. She'll be okay.
Exactly.
Oh wait, that's scallop.
But in terms of I guess I don't think I ever sort of projected what your future would be in terms of things like it was pretty easy to sit there and say, well, yeah, she's probably not going to be a surgeon or a pilot, but I didn't actually have what I would envision a career for you. And again, recognizing that there, within the disability community, particularly within blindness and partial sight, there's significant levels of unemployment or underemployment. Mm-hmm. There's significant barriers to this day for people trying to gain employment. So, to me, I think it's great that you're actually charting your own path and sort of saying, I am going to be self-reliant and I'm going to do something that I both love and I kind of maintain and control. And again, it's like, the older you get, the more you realize that you spend so much time working that you better love what you do and really enjoy it, mm-hmm. because you spend an awful lot of time doing it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially like in North America, the culture around work is like work is life, especially since technology became so readily at our fingertips. I think no matter what career you're in, when you're an adult, most of us work evenings and weekends. That's just unfortunately like the way it is. So we're both lucky to love what we do and have something that's rewarding. I remember when I first started, when I started YouTube, I was already very successful in the motivational speaking industry. And I remember going to you guys and telling you I wanted to like get a camera and start filming videos and posting them online, and you guys were like, and it took a while for you guys to come around, but now they've been my biggest cheerleaders and my biggest support. And you know, even when my mom and I were away from my dad for long periods of time, he was always incredibly supportive and like really wanted my mom to be there for me and to continue to work for me. So I mean, I wouldn't be as far along as I am if you weren't so supportive and allowing, literally like donating your wife to me for years to work with me and travel the world.
Yeah, that might be a bit generous of a statement. I mean, I think more it was your mother constantly making sure they were on the road, long road trips, so that she wouldn't have to come home. Frankly.
Oh no!
But, you know.
The tea is hot.
Exactly.
I think a good follow-up to this question, actually, since you touched on workplace discrimination for disabled people and in particular the high rates of unemployment for blind people, have you ever seen me be discriminated against, and how do you handle it when you do?
So the sad answer is yes, more so when it comes to things like, you know, when you're walking around with you Gallop or previous to that Gypsy or service dogs, when you see people say, I'm not going to let you in this cab, you're not going to get picked up at the airport by a taxi at the airport. You have people who want to say, you can't come into the restaurant, or you can't come in here with that animal. That's where, because mom certainly spends more time with you than I do. She probably sees it in other aspects. That's been my primary exposure. It's, my immediate reaction is like, I this will surprise you, I know. I can have a temper. And so, like, oftentimes,
I get my fire and passion from my dad. We're fiery people when we get passionate.
It's this, like, I just get angry. And I have to sort of continue to work myself to recognize that a lot of it's just an awareness and understanding problem, because there's just a lot of people who don't understand about the rights of persons with disabilities or service animal users. There's sadly a lot of people who, frankly need to look in a mirror and say, is this the person I want to be? Who walk around with fake guide dog, or service animal vests, because they think it's just great to be able to pull one off on somebody. It's like, give your head a shake, look in the mirror and say, is this the person I want to be? Is this who I want to represent myself to the rest of the world? Because I'm pretty sure the answer to that would be no.
Give you a round of applause.
But
well said.
Yeah, so to me, but I guess that also fuels the work that we do with AMI. When I love when we do stories about, we do with our original content where we'll talk with those kind of issues and raise them, because hopefully it's as a media company, I'm hoping that some of what we can do as well is start to bring people's attention and focus to these issues. And over time, it's about education and getting people aware of what these what people's rights are, so that they can make the right decision. It's not just a knee-jerk reaction.
Oh, by the way, one of my patrons, Dan, is a big AMI fan, and he's been following me since my AMI days. Shout out to you, Dan. Much love to Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
And we'll end on a low note.
Perfect.
Does my blindness, and has my blindness over the years, made you more fearful of me getting in trouble with dating and boys?
Yeah, I have to say candidly, yes, because, as a father, you're probably always kind of worried about your daughter and the dating scene. I mean, you worry about your sons too, but you like to think that, with your own son, you can sit there and say, this is right and this is wrong, and I've raised you to behave this way. You don't have that control when it's someone else's child. I mean, you can only hope that they've done the same thing. But, when I grew up, there weren't things like date rape drugs that could get slipped into somebody's drink, right? Like, all that stuff didn't exist. And so you think about somebody being at a party where, the kind of people who are going to slip that into somebody's drink, they're making bad decisions in the first place. So the thought that you could succumb to that kind of behavior more easily because you don't have, vision, was absolutely kind of more worrying. No doubt about it. Yeah, absolutely more
Which,
worrying.
I mean, is completely fair because we know statistically that disabled women are at higher risk to face things like sexual assault. And we know that within that category, when you break it down, women who are deaf and women who are blind are highest at risk due to the fact that one of our key senses that keeps us aware of our surroundings and able to kind of prepare and defend ourselves is, in some way impaired. So, I mean, it's fair, only fair that like you would feel that. I wouldn't expect you not to. But actually, there is a question that is similar to this that, because you brought up my brother, I think would be interesting to end on, and maybe it'll be like a little bit of an iron note. What are some things that you had to worry about or be more mindful of when it came to me that you didn't necessarily have to be mindful of when it came to Brady, my brother, or worry about as much with him?
Well, I guess there were two things. One, it was like, if Brady ever needed, for example, any help with homework or that kind of thing as a kid, it was like you open the textbook, you read the lesson, you try to help, and you kind of go, okay, here, let me explain this to you. In your case, it was almost like, okay, how do I take, might be like, particularly with math, I always remember like having to...
He was my math tutor.
The night before, kind of go back and try and relearn, geography or, geometry that I hadn't used for years and years and years, and try to think about how do I take what is largely a visual concept and communicate that to somebody you can't see. So there were always those kind of things.
Yeah, and even when I was writing my answers out, I'm writing it in Braille. So it's not like you can even really like look over my shoulder and kind of like follow along with what I'm doing. So it was really, we had to over communicate back and forth. Like I had to verbalize what I was typing out. He had to try to verbalize things that are visual in a non-visual way. Yeah,
but I think the other part that was probably even more important was that where it took us more effort, I think, than we had to do, certainly with Brady, was, with Brady it was like, oh, I want to play hockey, or I want to do this sport, or I want to do this activity, I want to take up guitar. With you, we always had that sort of layer that we had to put on top of, which is this something that she can continue to do? Is there, an adaptive side to this sport so that it's not constantly, I'm learning something and getting shut down. I'm learning something and getting shut down. It's, can I learn something that I can continue to pursue over the course of my lifetime, whether that's things like horseback riding or skiing or that kind of thing. So that was always trying to think about those kind of activities that you could benefit from the longer term, recognizing that, sadly there's an awful lot of things that you do have to stop doing, either for a safety reason or some other reason.
Right, and being that like Brady was the cool older brother, and he, both of us were super active kids, like always wanting to be in everything, whether it was the arts or the sports or kind of everything in between. So it's tough when like he's able to just kind of do anything that he thinks dreams up doing. But then for me, it's like, okay, I really want to do this thing, but is there a way that we can make that actually happen? Like, is it realistic? Also, of course, I faced a lot more bullying as well. That was something you didn't really have to deal with as much with Brady.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So if any of this has sparked your curiosity, again, comment below and let us know. I'll maybe pin a comment asking for even more questions in case there's something we talked about that you'd be interested in hearing us elaborate more on. He would be happy to appear in another video.
As far as I know, this is part 1 of a 7-part series, which will also go to Amazon Prime and Netflix at a later date as part of the long-term streaming plan.
Audio description included, of course.
Of course.
Thank you for being on the channel. We appreciate having you here. I'm sorry this video didn't end in an Omega watch like the last one. Maybe part 2.
There you go.
No, I don't want to set up that expectation. There's no watches in your future. I apologize.
And sorry, parenting hot tip. Raising a child with a disability through their teenage years, they can be just as challenging as every other teenager. Here's a tip as a parent of a child with low vision or blindness. You don't need to ground them when they misbehave. You just move the furniture around the house, and they'll learn very quickly what happens when they break the rules.
And you wonder where I get my sass from. Right here. Okay, if you want more Molly, you can click over here to watch this video or over here to see this one. Bye, guys.
And subscribe to my book, 100 Tips for Parents with Disabilities.
He doesn't have a book. He's a fat liar.